Oof. Good morning. We mighty few, good morning. Please join us as we sing together to get started.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome here to First Unitarian Church of Portland. We're a multi-generational community that strives to nurture the individual spirit as well as together build the beloved community. Welcome all gathered here. Welcome all joining us online. And a special welcome to those who are back for after some time away or those who are new to us today. We're so glad you're here. I'm pleased to welcome our guest preacher this morning, the Reverend Patrice Curtis. Patrice currently serves on the staff of the Unitarian Universalist Association as Transformational Interim Ministries Director. In that role, Patrice collaborates and supports interim ministers and congregations in amplifying and practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion within our congregations. You may know that Patrice served as this congregation's intern minister as part of her formation process, and Patrice was ordained by this congregation along with her home congregation in Walnut Creek, California. Patrice and her wife Nancy's here. Welcome back, Nancy. Patrice and her wife Nancy live in Phoenix, and Patrice, we're glad that Portland has offered you a little respite from the Phoenix heat. Patrice, so glad to have you back. Welcome. Following the service, I hope you'll join fellow congregants for a social hour right after the service. That will be in Fuller Hall, right below the sanctuary. You can check out the art wall display as well as the first share table where congregants are invited to share from their garden bounty from this season. There is also a special event after the service today. Join our Animal Ministries group and Northwest Veg for vegan snacks in the Buchanan Reception Hall after the service. Then at 12:30 in our Elliott Chapel, there will be a presentation by two sisters who have organized a volunteer-run vegan kitchen in war-torn Ukraine, feeding hundreds of refugees there. This is a fascinating story and some very wonderful work that they're doing. Come and hear their story and how we here in the United States might support their efforts. That event is free and open to the public. Once again, welcome everyone on this summer morning, and let's take some time now to greet one another. Let's greet our neighbors here in person and online. Reverend Patrice will light our chalice this morning. If you're joining us online, please light a chalice or a candle at home if you have one. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love.
May your light shine before you. May your love grow within you. May your spirit soar above you. And may you walk in peace. May your heart's dreams call you. And no harm befall you, and may grace enthrall you, and may you walk in peace.
Beloveds, we come from all the places of our separate lives to this hour, from love and grief, hope and worry, solitude and activity, to be renewed and find celebration. Lifting a cloud of daily concerns, pleasures and pains, annoyances and angers, and yes, rage, we give pause here. We give thanks here to feel wonder and to experience life. Come, let us be together this morning with an open heart. Come, let us worship together. Thank you to Anonymous and to myself for that. Please join in singing our first hymn, Spirit, Spirit of Gentleness. Please join me in Jalaluddin Rumi's The Guest House, responsive reading. I invite you to read the italicized words. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. They may be clearing out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for their crowns, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Please join in our doxology, Spirit of Life.
Our story for all ages today is one you may be familiar with. It's a classic by Judith Viorst, illustrated by Ray Cruz. Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard, and by mistake, I dropped my sweater in the sink while the water was running, and I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At breakfast, Anthony found a Corvette Stingray car kit in his breakfast cereal box, and Nick found a junior undercover agent code ring in his breakfast cereal box. But in my breakfast box, all I found was breakfast cereal. I think I'll move to Australia. In the carpool, Mrs. Gibson let Becky have a seat by the window. Audrey and Elliot got seats by the window too. I said I was being scrunched. I said I was being smushed. I said, if I don't get a seat by the window, I'm going to be carsick. No one even answered. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At school, Mrs. Dickens liked Paul's picture of the sailboat better than my picture of the invisible castle. At singing time, she said I sang too loud. At counting time, she said I left out 16. Who needs 16? I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I could tell because Paul said I wasn't his best friend anymore. He said that Philip Parker was his best friend and that Alex Moyo was his next best friend and that I was only his third best friend. I hope you sit on a tack, I said to Paul. I hope the next time you get a double-decker strawberry ice cream cone and the ice cream part falls off the cone part and lands in Australia. there were 2 cupcakes in Philip Parker's lunch bag, and Albert got a Hershey bar with almonds, and Paul's mother gave him a piece of jelly roll that had little coconut sprinkles on the top. Guess whose mother forgot to put in dessert in his lunch? It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. That's what it was, because after school, my mom took us all to the dentist, and Dr. Fields found a cavity just in me. "Come back next week and I'll fix it," said Dr. Fields. Next week, I said, "I'm going to Australia." On the way downstairs, the elevator door closed on my foot, and while we were waiting for my mom to go get the car, Anthony made me fall where it was muddy. And then when I started crying because of the mud, Nick said I was a crybaby. And while I was punching Nick for saying crybaby, my mom came back with the car and scolded me for being muddy and for fighting. I am having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, I told everybody. No one even answered. So then we went to the shoe store to buy some sneakers. Anthony chose white ones with blue stripes. Nick chose red ones with white stripes. I chose blue ones with red stripes. But then the shoe man said, "We're all sold out." They made me buy plain old white ones, but they can't make me wear them. When we pick up my dad at his office, he said I couldn't play with his copying machine, but, well, I forgot. He also said to watch out for the books on his desk, and I was careful as could, but except for, well, my elbow. He also said don't fool around with his phone, but I think I called Australia. My dad says, "Please don't pick me up anymore." It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. There were lima beans for dinner, and I hate lima beans. There was kissing on TV, and I hate kissing. My bath was too hot. I got soap in my eyes. My marble went down the drain, and I had to wear my railroad train pajamas. I hate my railroad train pajamas. When I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow he said I could keep, and the Mickey Mouse nightlight burned out, and I bit my tongue. The cat went to sleep with Anthony, not with me. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. My mom says some days are just like that, even in Australia. So ends our story. I invite any children we have to join with others next door in our Buchanan building for some games and for some activities. You are also most welcome to stay here in the sanctuary. We're going to sing now a song, "Winds Be Still." It's our custom to share our offering with organizations in concert with our own church mission. This morning we're sharing our plate with Drum, diverse and revolutionary Unitarian Universalist multicultural ministries. Drum is a UU People of Color ministry and anti-racist collective bringing lay and religious professionals together to overcome racism through resistance and to transform Unitarian Universalism through multicultural experiences. If you'd like to give electronically, you can find a QR code on the screen shortly, or there's a yellow slip that hopefully you can find in the chairs around you. And if you're here in person this morning and want to give, an usher will be coming by shortly to collect your donation. Thank you for your generosity today and in all days. We make space each week in our service for the concerns of our community life together. A reminder that pastoral support happens in our congregation through ministers and lay ministers. Each week you can light a candle of intention in one of our side galleries, and you can leave a prayer request that are held through the week. And if you're online, you can send an intention to prayer at firstunitarianportland.org. Last week we mentioned that member Carolyn Buell took a bad fall on July 12th. She suffered a brain injury, she broke her arm, and she badly injured her eye. Carolyn is making progress this week, and she moved to a skilled nursing facility to continue her recovery. She continues to appreciate our prayers and our good thoughts. Cards are still welcome, and it would be good for visitors to check with Carolyn's daughter, Dana Buell, our social justice director. And an update on members Wosha and Tom Hampson. Wosha was diagnosed with cognitive impairment 6 years ago, and with Alzheimer's disease 3 or 4 years ago. She moved into memory care at Touchmark in the West Hills in November of 2022. She's healthy and doing well and enjoys visitors and cards. Tom says despite the disability, she remains active and positive in her outlook on life. We send them our love and care this morning. Will you join me now in prayer? Spirit of life and of love, God of many names and of no name at all, hear our prayers this day. Be with us and all the concerns we bring, the life's passages we mark, prayers for our lives, prayers for our children's lives, prayers for this good green earth and for all the life it makes possible. There is much to hold, Spirit, in the midst of heat, in the midst of smoke, in the midst of so much that seems in peril. Help us in the midst of fear, in the midst of our despair. Help us over and over again to recognize our interdependence. Help us to recognize how our lives are so very much connected with all living beings. And help us to bear witness, not only to the brokenness, but to the beauty around us too. In our bearing witness, may we find our way to healing and to hope and to possibility. Through it all, Spirit, be with us and help us as we find our way, each of us and all of us together. Amen. Let's take a few moments now and be together in silence. Our reading this morning comes from Lillian E. Curtis. Guard thy lips. Oh, when harsh and hasty words arise and clouds of vexation dim the eyes, and anger begins to settle down, and the face puts on a sullen frown, when wrathful thoughts rush quickly up, oh, dash aside the poisoned cup, and guard thy lips. Guard them, lest in an unguarded hour they should utter beyond thy power words to wound some loving heart, perhaps a lasting scar impart, inevitable words when once they're spoken, nothing can heal the heart they've broken. Then guard thy lips. So ends our reading today.
My grandmother, Dorothy, had a sort of stern affect. She wasn't overly affectionate physically. She showed her love by cooking pancakes for us, breakfast, lunch, and dinner as often as we wanted them, and squeezing fresh orange juice, and having a really cool room up in the attic that made us feel like we were in a treehouse. But she was stern, not given to laughing easily, and quick to tell us when we had strayed from the mark, though very gently. She'd had a somewhat challenging life, extremely intelligent, brought up by parents who'd expected her to go to college in the early 1920s, which she did, graduating in 1922 from what is now designated an historically black college. She became a high school teacher, and in the 1940s, she went back to get her master's degree to become an even better teacher, as she said. She was a black woman doing this well before the civil rights movement, going to college, grad school, intellectually gifted in math, yet always limited in ways that she could use her talent. She had reason to be angry from time to time. When I was about 15, my grandmother came to visit us, and one day during her visit, she turned to me suddenly and asked, "Why are you so angry?" She didn't ask it with heat. She didn't ask as an accusation. Rather, it had a feeling of real interest and curiosity, and as a way to reflect her experience of me in that moment. Now, I was a teenager with, all those hormones, and we moved halfway through my high school, so I was at a new high school, and I never did make any friends there. I sometimes felt like I was in the midst of a mighty dust storm, Haboob, the howling winds pushing me here and there, having no control over what was happening in my day-to-day life. And I felt like my stern, white-gloved, Christian, Methodist, Episcopalian, church-going grandmother was always trying to tell me what to do. And she was only visiting. So my first reaction was to just look at her when she asked this question. I remember this moment quite well. I was nonplussed. I didn't know what to think of her question. Then, kind of teenage-like, I harumphed away. Respectfully, of course, but still. Her comment caught my attention, and I found myself thinking about why she might think I was so angry all the time. I hadn't realized that maybe I was. And maybe I was taking that teenage anger out on the people around me. I suspect some of you may have a story like this if you have children. There's a fascinating article on the history of anger in a 2019 Atlantic magazine article by Charles Duhigg. He reports that as recent as the 1980s, researchers were still describing anger as a base instinct, a vestige from our savage past that served no useful purpose in contemporary life. The people who were angry ought to be embarrassed, and that academics described anger as a problem to be solved, an instinct with little social benefit. To white American psychology professor James Averill, however, that did not make sense. He wrote, "When something's bad for us, we usually get rid of it through evolution or social codes. But anger has been a part of humanity for as long as we've been alive. It's in the Bible and novels and plays. It's one of the most common emotions people say they feel." So because of Averill's work from the 1990s, anger became a much studied and analyzed emotion. The bottom line seems to be this: anger is a fundamental human emotion often viewed negatively due to its potential for harm and destruction. Yet anger has been and can be a powerful catalyst for change, offering opportunities for personal growth and social transformation. So Brené Brown, who many of us know well, white American woman, self-described researcher, storyteller, and currently enraged Texan, writes in her book, Atlas of the Heart, that over 90% of emotion experts believe now that anger is a primary human emotion. We feel it when we want something and don't get it. That could be a thing, or it could be an event, or it could be a feeling. Alexander's horrible day gave us lots of examples. He didn't get the sneakers he wanted, he didn't get the car window seat, and on and on. When Brené Brown asked 7,500 people to identify all the emotions they could recognize at the time they were experiencing them, she found that on average there were just 3: happy, sad, and pissed off. Now, Brown is not sure that anger is a primary human emotion. She thinks anger is a complicated emotion that signals other feelings. And she lists 19 possible emotions. 18 of them are loneliness, rejection, fear, anxiety, hurt, grief, sadness, isolation, helplessness, humiliation, overwhelming stress, confusion, frustration, guilt, shame, jealousy, embarrassment, and depression. Maybe if we pay attention to when we are angry, it would help illuminate other emotions, some of these emotions that we might be having trouble articulating, or that they are emotions that we don't want to own that we are feeling. Maybe we can use anger to deepen our personal understanding. Maybe when someone is angry at us, it would be easier for us to offer them grace and forgiveness and understanding if we attend to what might be a part of or under that anger. The 19th emotion that Brown lists is outrage at injustice. As we sometimes sing from our gray hymnals, though we don't sing from our gray hymnals anymore, but still, we are a gentle, angry people. Anger is well documented as fuel for activism. Many of us are comfortable with this kind of anger. It pulls us into action. It fuels our paintbrushes when we're making signs. It helps get us out on the streets, on the steps of the Supreme Court. It helps us walk miles and miles and miles. It powers knitting needles to make pink hats, opens our checkbooks and Venmo. How many of you have experienced the anger of witnessing an injustice? How many of you? I think that's about all of us. How many of you have experienced anger in reading about the latest travesty passed in the Florida legislature? How many of you have experienced anger during the civil rights era as you watch little girls trying to go to school? Or the many cell phone videos of this century of injustices? How many of you are angry that in many states, women must leave their state to receive the most basic health care? Are we pissed? Can I get an amen up in here? Amen. Oh my goodness. I have to take a couple of breaths just thinking about all the injustice that is happening right now. We find anger in the sacred texts of Buddhism. The Buddha names anger, along with greed and delusion, as a poison that keeps humankind bound in the chains of suffering, limiting the fullness of who we could be, and sometimes resulting in us hurting one another with words or deeds. Many sides of anger. Like Brené Brown, American Lama Rod Owens is another longtime activist. A gay black man from the South, he grew up in the black evangelical church, but is now a highly respected Buddhist monk in a Tibetan lineage. In his book, Love and Rage, Lama Rod explores his journey into the heart of eventually loving his anger. He writes that anger can be a place of power in confronting injustices, but he has also realized that anger can be twisted so that its energy makes one feel powerful and validated when that might not be true. It is, as probably all of us have belatedly realized from time to time, a slippery slope from moral anger, twisting it into a self-righteous anger, an ego-based anger. It is in those times we may fail to guard our lips. Another Dharma teacher, Zen Buddhist monk Zenju Earthland Manuel, wrote an article last year in Lion's Roar called Awakening Fueled by Rage. Zenju describes being tokenized, a black-skinned body in the black robes of an ordained Zen priest. She writes, for a Dharma teacher, there is an unspoken rule not to feel or express rage. Rage is considered unenlightened. In our Dharma communities, as in our day-to-day lives, we most often wear masks of politeness to conceal the rage we carry. Yet to fully feel is to be fully human. She continues, it's true that rage, like fire, can be harmful, burning away everything in its path. But rage can also be life-giving, illuminating. I too feel rage, but rather than lash out from my pain and anguish, I've learned to use my rage to fuel a transformation toward awakening. So James Averill says that anger is one of the densest forms of communication. Think about this, the most densest form of communication. It conveys more information more quickly than almost any other type of emotion. And it does an excellent job of forcing us to listen to and confront problems we might otherwise avoid. It conveys more information more quickly. Imagine yourself in the midst of being angry. How direct do you become? In his study, he found that angry episodes typically took the form of short and restrained conversations. They rarely became blowout fights, and contrary to his own expectation, they didn't make a bad situation worse. Instead, they tended to make bad situations much, much better. So we know these clarifying conversations happen all over the place. Anger experts report that these conversations between spouses lead to greater understanding of a raft of topics. Anger between parents and teens have led to compromises in expected behavior that finally gives everyone some sense of satisfaction and maybe even peace in the house. Anger between friends resulted in clearing the air of long-held grievances, and on and on. Direct communication. So the heated energy of anger does have its place. But we need to tread carefully, discerning our own real feelings, and if we can, resisting getting caught up in the angry tenor of our society, of our angry society. Soto Zen priest, psychotherapist, Jules Susan Harris Roshi, who recently died, wrote, "I have often observed that while we each experience anger in our own way, a more general sense of anger pervades our society. That is, as a culture, we are angry. Our sense of humor is very sarcastic. A lot of what we find entertaining involves putting someone down, laughing at others' misfortune, is a kind of expression of our own anger. We may be fully aware of our own behavior and not like it, but still find our actions don't change. In the Dharma talk, Thich Nhat Hanh called this process habit energy, the feeling energy that is created within us when we do something again and again and again in the same way and get in a rut. Habit energy gives us momentum to actions that make us feel emotionally safe and secure, though they make no sense. Habits. Even though we know that everything is impermanent, we often still act as if it is not, as if we are able to control all aspects of our life for personal benefit, including death. And the reality is that we can't. We can't control aspects of our life. We really control very little. What can result is that we live in and act from a place of fear and discomfort, and that dissonance is one seed of anger. If we want to own anger and not have it own us, then we need to deepen into slowing down, being self-aware of what is happening in our bodies and with our emotions, staying present to the current moment. And we have to try to let go of that habit energy of what makes us feel angry. We can't let our anger become a haboob, a dust storm darkening the skies from a long way off, scouring everything with grit and wind, taking paint off cars, howling around us, seeping into every doorway, and covering everything with a fine film of sand, difficult to remove. And I speak from having lived through those when I lived in Khartoum, and let me tell you, it was the first moment that I realized what the Bible meant when it talked about these great events that happened. It felt biblical to me. Lama Rod learned to love his anger. We don't want to stuff our anger because that has a bad effect on our bodies. So it's not about getting rid of anger, it's about becoming aware of it. So Lama Rod learned to love his anger, and that itself transformed its impact and his life. He says, I started practicing loving anger because I wanted to be liberated from it. When I say liberated, I do not mean the erasure of my anger, but to no longer be caught up in a compulsory relationship with it. When I talk about loving anger, I am not saying that I love what it does, or what it helps me to do, or how it makes me feel. I don't love it because of what it gives me. I love my anger because it is mine. Loving my anger means that I allow it to be there without judgment and without shame. I accept it. Moreover, loving anger disrupts its power over me and allows space for me to be in power over my anger. I love that. I found, obviously, that my grandma Dorothy questioning my anger has stayed with me all these years. Her question turned out to be an inflection point in my life, guiding me toward a maturing examination of my emotions. I have been angry as a haboob in my lifetime, and I may be angry as a haboob again. But it does not control me. The first time I felt that anger, I was 8, and my family was subjected to a terrible racist event. I had to watch my mother not cry. I had to discover that the one thing my father had from his father, who died when he was a child, was gone. That is the first time I remember feeling really angry, and being angry that I had been made to feel so angry. With the wisdom of age, how I wish I could have a conversation with my grandma today as an adult. But I won't become annoyed over my sadness. Namaste. Will you pray with me? Sacred universe, God, divine presence known by numberless names. In this sacred space, we are gathered here, acknowledging that this life is a profound journey. We traverse through the vast expanse of physical and internal space, guided by our senses, experiencing the breadth and depth of emotions, from times of infinite hope and joy to righteous rage. Grant us the wisdom and self-love to navigate this intricate voyage, that we may cherish the beauty and embrace challenges. Illuminate our minds with knowledge and insight and peace, so we may learn from every experience encountered along the way. Help us to cultivate empathy and compassion for those traveling with us who are struggling. May we feel that unwavering love surrounding us, and with grateful hearts surrender to this unfolding mystery of life, forever seeking the divine essence within ourselves and one another. Ashe and Namaste. Please join in singing our closing hymn, Just as Long as I Have Breath. Oh, thank you so much to Joe, DeRoe, and the choir. My heart is full. Thank you to all of you. May your actions be guided by wisdom and understanding. May you find solace in moments of stillness and reflection and be nourished by the beauty of the world around you. May you be a beacon of light in a world that sometimes feels dim. Let your righteous anger fuel that light. And still, may you find peace in the midst of all of this chaos. May you embrace the power of anger, yet not be overturned by it. Through all of what may come to you in this next week, may you feel the loving kindness that surrounds you, that surrounds all of us, that holds all of us. This is the day we have been given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Oh, sorry. Let's start over. I did not know you said that together. This is the day we have been given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace. Practice love. Amen.